Hi everyone, I'm Tiffany and I'm going to show you guys how to make smothered beef tips. I was Googling recipes on the internet for smothered beef tips, and I was also looking online for videos for smothered beef tips, and I couldn't find anything. So since I couldn't find anything on smothered beef tips, I decided I would go ahead, give this a try, and upload it to YouTube for you guys to see how I make smothered beef tips. So although I've never made smothered beef tips, I've made smothered chicken, I've made smothered pork chops, and I've made fricassee. So I'm like, what's the difference between one smothered item to the next? So this is what we're gonna do. I have some stew meat here from my local grocery store. I have some salt. I prefer to use sea salt. I have smoked paprika. I have cayenne pepper. I have garlic powder and black pepper. So I also have some olive oil here, and I also have some butter. So I'm a big fan of butter, and I'm also a big fan of Paula Deen. Bless her heart. So what we're gonna do really fast is I'm going to chop up this onion. And I also want to tell you guys that I allowed my stew meat to become room temperature. So when I cook with not ground beef, but any type of beef, whether it's steak or stew meat, or even ribs, I like to allow my beef to become room temperature. And once it becomes room temperature, I then like to drizzle a little bit of olive oil on the ground beef, and then after I drizzle the olive oil, I will add my seasonings. So excuse me, I have a lot of things cooking as I prepare the smothered beef tips. So I'm also going to have rice with this, and I'm also going to have candied yams, and I'm feeling kind of lazy, so I'm not going to make pinto beans from scratch. But I did buy some pinto beans in the can, some just plain Central Market organic pinto beans. I'm really funny about what I buy in the can, so I try to make sure I get at least a good quality product. So once your stew meat becomes room temperature, the next thing I would suggest doing is drizzling the olive oil over it. And you also want to rinse it off. A lot of times we trust our butchers, but it's always just safe to rinse it off. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add salt. Whenever I add salt, I never add it directly to the meat. It's really easy to over salt something. So I always pour the salt in my hand so I can see about how much I want to add, because it's a lot easier to get rid of the salt out of my hand than it is to get it off the meat. So once I do that, I drizzle the salt on here, my good old sea salt. This is not the sea salt I normally buy, but hey, it works. It's a little bit thicker. And then once I add the salt, I'll add my smoked paprika. I usually just eyeball things. I've been cooking for a little while, and I figure I can't go wrong with salt, smoked paprika, garlic powder, cayenne, and regular pepper. We like to spice things up. But hey, don't use the cayenne pepper. So a little bit of garlic powder. Don't go too heavy on the garlic powder, or it's just going to be bad. So a little bit of cayenne pepper for me. If you like spice, add a little bit of cayenne pepper. Add a little bit of black pepper. I mean, you can also use a Cajun seasoning with some pepper. If you're familiar with Tony Chachere's, you can use Tony Chachere's. They actually have a spice brand. I think it's called More Spice. So actually, I have a few type that I like, but you know what? I think I'll show you guys some of my favorite spices, especially my favorite Creole spices, and I'll just upload them as a video so you can see my absolute diehard favorite Creole seasoning. If I don't make my own seasoning, then my go-to seasoning, which I found a store, one of my local grocery stores actually carries it, but it's rather expensive. So anyways, let's get back to the topic. So okay, I have my seasoning. Now I'm going to massage this stew meat. I'm going to massage my seasonings and the olive oil into my stew meat. Over on the stove right now, I have a pot heating up with butter. Yeah, I said it, butter. Not margarine, not, it could be butter or whatever that other margarine is. Just butter, pure butter, grade AA butter. That's what we eat. We don't do anything fat-free in this home. I try not to do processed foods. Sometimes I get a little lazy, but for the most part, I make everything by scratch. So anyhow, let's go ahead, massage this beef, make it feel good, and then we're gonna feel good as we eat it. Alrighty, so that's pretty good. It's massaged, it's happy, and we're gonna keep it moving. So now that that's massaged, I'm gonna go to the sink. I'm just gonna rinse my hands off really fast. So forgive me again. So actually I'm going to end up washing my hands. I said rinse, but I'm going to wash because, hey, we don't want to contaminate anything. So now that I've washed my hands, I'm going to go ahead and take these onions that we chopped up, and I'm going to take them over to our pan that's over there heating with butter, and I'm going to saute these onions really fast. So you guys can come with me. I haven't purchased a video camera, so I'm just going to use my iPad. So here we are. Let's have a look-see in the pot. There's my butter. It's almost burning. That's not good, but it's fine. Hey, some people like brown butter. Actually, when you brown butter, not burn butter, but when you brown butter, you could actually brown it and use it as ghee. Ghee, G-H-E-E, I believe. And ghee is a really flavorful, golden, maple flavor and method of cooking butter. And when you do that process, it's absolutely amazing. And a lot of Indian dishes call for ghee. In fact, one of my favorite Indian dishes, which is gulab jamun, calls for ghee. So let's go ahead, brown our onion, saute it, make them sweat, get some of this flavor into our pan, because we're going to take our beef tips and we're going to put it right in this pan as well. So I'm just gonna make a few recipes for YouTube, and let's see how it goes. If you guys like my recipes, maybe I'll invest in a camera. Who knows? But let's go ahead and help a few people out. Okay, so these are pretty nice. They're sauteed, and I'm gonna take out these cooked onions. I'm gonna put you guys to the side so you can just look at me while I talk. So sorry if this makes you guys dizzy. So I'm taking out my sauteed onions, and after I take out my sauteed onions, immediately after, I'm going to add my stew meat, and I'm going to brown that as well. So I'm just going to get a little bit of nice sear to my meat to seal in any moisture while we smother our beef tips. Okay, so just about got most of these onions out. I need to turn my pan down. So one of my favorite pans to cook in is my Le Creuset. You don't have to have a Le Creuset. I actually saw an article that suggested a Dutch oven, not the Le Creuset Dutch oven, but a Dutch oven from Walmart that was about $30 on one of my favorite cooking websites. And hey, sounds affordable, and it was rated very well. I'm just addicted to my Le Creuset. So I don't have many pieces. I only have 2 pieces. Eventually, I plan to invest in more. So let's go ahead and get the stew meat. Let's get that in there and get it brown. All right, let's check it out. I'm sure you guys are dying to see it. So my stew meat is in there. I'm gonna let it start browning up. And you guys will have to come back from part 2 because I don't want to leave you guys on the camera and sitting there waiting while it browns. So come back for part 2 of my smothered beef tips. Thanks. Hello, I'm back again. It's me, Tiffany. So we're here for part 2 of the smothered beef tips. I'm going to show you guys these beef tips because they've been browning very, very nicely. Take a look at those smothered beef tips. Okay, so they're not smothered yet, but they're browning. So now that these beef tips are browning, what we want to do is we want to get them out of this. So while you guys were away and I was on break preparing for part 2, I actually went ahead and I put in a bag with my flour. So in part 1 I told you I had a bag with flour. So in part 2 what I'm going to do, what I did actually already is I added some seasonings, the same seasonings that I told you about in part 1, I added to the bag. So in part 1, I seasoned the beef, but I only seasoned the beef using, excuse me, I only seasoned the beef using salt, pepper, and olive oil. So it's going to make this beef taste wonderful. So we have a few remnants in the pan, and that's what we like. So, and we still have the onions that we smothered in part 1. So I'm going to get all of this out. It's out. Whew. Excuse me. I love spice, but that pepper gets to me. I don't know what it is. So anyways, let's take a look in the pan. So you see that we have all of those remnants there from the beef, from the onions. And what that's going to do is going to provide for good flavor. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lightly put some flour that I've seasoned in this pan. I want this flour to brown, so I'm going to try to put it pretty thin, like a thin coating of flour on the entire bottom of the pan, because I want this flour to brown. So it's almost like the flour is cooking. And this is how you actually also make gravy or roux. I'm a really big gumbo person. I don't think anyone makes better gumbo than me, but hey, that's for another video, another time. So anyways, I have that in there. Let me show you again real quick. So you see how the flour is lightly in there. In most places it just looks like the pan is brown, but really the flour is like all throughout the pan. There's a little bit more than that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add some beef stock. So a new ingredient is beef stock. So what I need to do is I'm going to slowly start adding my beef stock in. I won't be able to show you guys while I do this. Unfortunately, I don't have anyone videotaping for me. So what you'll do is you'll slowly add a little bit at a time. So just like that. And when you do that, you have to be whisking. And you're going to be whisking pretty fast. So I'm going to put you guys on hold while I whip up this gravy. So give me a second. And I am just whipping up my gravy. You don't want to add too much moisture too soon or too late. So as you see everything starting to dissolve, go ahead and add a little bit more. It's going to get thick like a paste, kind of, well, pretty much just like a paste. So like Elmer's glue almost, or like a custard. But you guys know what paste is, I'm sure. So it's going to get thick just like a paste. So I'm going to add a little bit more moisture, a little bit at a time. And I'm going to keep whisking. You need to make sure that you whisk pretty quickly. And don't worry if it's a little bit clumpy. I mean, stuff happens. If it's clumpy, take your gravy out the pan and put it in the blender. Don't throw it out. I never throw out my gravy, no matter what I do to mess it up. Sometimes, you know, it fixes itself. But whatever you do, don't toss it. So my gravy's coming together nicely. I'm continuing to whisk. So if you haven't got your exercise for the day, you'll definitely get it from whisking your gravy. So I'm going to add just a little bit more. And as it cooks, it will continue to thicken. So don't worry. Go ahead and add more of your beef stock. Add a little bit more. It'll continue to thicken. So once you've finished your beef broth, let's add these onions back in. We want the flavor from the onions to be in there. And once you add your onions back in, let's go ahead and add these this stew meat back in here. And once you add your stew meat in, you'll just leave it there to cook. And you'll come back. I usually don't leave the kitchen. My mom was really strict with us when we would cook. And she said, cooks never leave the kitchen. So I usually don't leave the kitchen. I do something else. I'm working on several things. I told you guys I was making candied sweet potatoes. I made rice. Now I got to make my skillet cornbread and my pinto beans. So add your meat back in. And once you add your meat in, allow it to boil and cook some more. And put your lid on. And guess what? You have smothered beef tips. Thanks, you guys. I hope to do some other videos real soon. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave me some comments. Let me know critiques or anything. All comments are welcome. Thank you.